Hello, everyone. And I think I'm very excited about this panel because I think it reaches an important part of the communities that we don't always talk about. I think we've talked big level, and Irving did talk about bringing people all over the world in. Today, we're going to talk about the role of green banks, but also particularly the role about reaching communities, low-income communities in the United States that have not always been part of the energy transition, and really about how we get them to come along. And Doug, I thought we'd start with you just to sort of outline where we are now and what some of the issues are that we're facing.
Well, if I could, I wanted to start with kind of the time frame and context of when we began 14 years ago, because this was really the end of the Bush administration. We were in the throes of a recession. Rick Scott had just been elected as governor in the state of Florida and had told staff they couldn't utter the phrase climate change. So it was a very difficult environment to be working in. I was serving as a county commissioner at the time, and I would really say there were three main reasons that we just felt that the Green Bank needed to be created. The first was the political landscape. The fact that Florida was basically the black hole for clean energy with no meaningful clean energy policies. In fact, I was fighting off coal plants as a county commissioner. The second issue in my mind was the missed opportunity. Florida was spending $50 to $60 billion a year buying carbon-based fuels from out of state and out of country to fuel their cities and cars instead of reinvesting in clean energy. So despite being the sunshine state, our energy portfolio was less than 1% solar. And then last and probably most importantly was the issue of financial inclusion. Most Americans, I think 2/3 of Americans don't have access to $400 in savings. Lenders Tree did a survey last year that identified that 42% of Americans were denied access to traditional financing. So as we're sitting thinking about how are we going to achieve clean energy and resilience for all, the question that has to be answered is how are we going to achieve that when half of America can't access traditional financing? So it was really with that backdrop that we sought and received a DOE Obama grant and basically created the first local green bank CDFI in America with a focus on low and moderate income people. And really the issue was that we felt that financing was the key to unlocking the clean energy economy in Florida.
So let's talk about the solution then. So we know what the problem is. The problem is that at the low income and really a surprising number of Americans just don't have the money to finance this. And we're talking about solar on the roof or beyond that. So the question is, what's the solution and how have you come about providing financing for this group of people?
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for having us here. It's really an honor. As a Green Bank and CDFI, which is a community development finance institution, we committed ourselves to doing at least 60% of all of our lending activity in low and moderate income populations. And that was intentional, mission driven. And we realized from the very beginning that, the system is set up to really keep people out of the system. So the first thing we did was decide to shift paradigms and break all the rules. Basically saying we're not going to lend based on credit scores, we're going to lend based on ability to repay. My background, I'm from Bolivia, so we're used to working with scarce resources in third world countries, and micro-lending methodologies have been around for over 30, 40 years. So we basically applied a micro-lending methodology where we take a deep dive into people's really disposable income at the end of the day. So our lending, of course, especially at the beginning, was slower, very, very intense, labor intensive. But after 10 years, we are now packaging our model. Our underwriting methodology has proven to be successful. We've deployed $30 million in small loans, small $6,000 to $10,000 loans, 74% in low and moderate income populations for people with like less than 620 credit scores, mostly.
I just want to stop. I'm going to let you go. That 74 number is amazing, right? What's the average? I just want you to.
Well, average penetration for green banks is around probably 20% now.
Okay, so the average penetration is 20%. they're at over 70%. I just want to stop and
Yes.
highlight that. Keep
And
going.
I think the other thing that's really important to note is that we have a less than 2% default rate. We do all consumer loans, unsecured. And people were telling us we were crazy, we were going to lose everything. But here we are. So I think that one of the main issues is innovation. We have to think differently about how to address these problems. We cannot do things the standard way. We have to break down the barriers of the systems that are in place. We have to treat people like they are people that want to do good for themselves, and where you're providing loans for people to build resilience, to fix up their homes, protect their families, gain access to health. And the end result is decarbonizing and also building more resilient and thriving communities. But that's not how we message and sell this whole idea of a transition to a clean energy economy to people who are surviving day to day and have priorities to take care of, like, what are they going to eat tomorrow? How are they going to pay for transportation? So everything we do is focused on the impact for the human being in a resident in a commercial building. Save energy, have a healthier home, have more resilience to hurricanes, and improve your life overall. So we adapted, we embraced disability, aging in place, home adaptations, impact windows, doors. All this language of clean energy needs to be demystified. What does it mean ultimately for people? And basically the solution was to provide access to financing, low-cost patient financing, partner public-private partnerships with local governments, build a contractor network that was reliable, pre-vetted, with minority contractors with inclusion, and raise capital that was patient capital, somebody was talking about that before, and leverage every public dollar multiple times. Our leveraging factor is 13 to 1.
We're gonna come back to public dollars, but I just hoped you could bring it back to us in really concrete terms. So these are $8,000 loans, $6,000 loans. What kind of, give us an actual story, like how does this work and how does it relate back to climate change
Okay.
and a cleaner?
We've helped over 3,200 people, so we have lots of stories, but one that comes to my mind is after Hurricane Irma hit Florida, there was a local retiree who was living with his elderly mother whose roof was severely impacted. The home was uninhabitable and they had to move out and were in a hotel. FEMA gave them a $5,000 check, but the roof repairs were $15,000. This gentleman had no savings and had no credit score. And you would think that with no credit score, he'd probably defaulted on every loan in his life and wasn't credit worthy. We did a deeper dive and looked at this individual's history, and we realized that he'd actually not defaulted on a single loan in his life. He hadn't accessed traditional financing since like 1994 and therefore had not established a credit score. He owned his home outright, had worked his entire life, he had retirement income, he had the ability to pay, and therefore we deemed him credit worthy. We provided him a $10,000 loan, which he matched with the $5,000 FEMA loan. He got out of the hotel, which they'd been in for a year on the government dime. Put a local contractor to work, got them back into their house. This gentleman has not missed a payment since. We also report our loans to the credit bureau. So he's actually building his credit with us as he's paying off his loan. So that's one of thousands of stories of people who just simply need access to low-cost capital so they can improve their homes.
And I think something you said to me, which I didn't quite fully understand, is that's also climate, that new roof.
Absolutely, it's resilience. In Florida, it's not only for safety but also financially because people are being dropped from insurance. Hundreds of thousands of people are losing insurance in Florida. So it's really a public safety issue, but it's also incredibly important for them to be able to retain insurance on their properties as well.
Also, can I add, it's just a transition. We can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. So people love to talk about solar and it's so sexy and it's so great. But the reality is communities need to transition. Meaning we need to fix their homes first. If you don't have a good roof, how can we put solar on your roof?
Right.
So this
And the roof is even good for like keeping energy in, right? Like a leaky roof
well,
versus.
exactly.
Yes.
What's a home without a roof to begin with, right? So you have a roof that's going to conserve energy. You have impact windows and doors that you need to seal the home, reduce energy demand as a first step. You have to create energy efficiency. Then you're going to need a smaller system, a smaller solar system, which is more economically viable as well. So, you know, when you approach this, you can't just think of like, oh, the ultimate goal. You have to think of how to get there.
Well, so now let's talk about those public dollars. We've talked a lot, I talked to Jigger this morning, but we've talked a lot about the IRA and the federal government. How do you see that impacting what you're doing right now?
Well, it's an opportunity of a lifetime, right? So,
there you go.
So what we're doing is, number one, is we're leveraging the technology we've developed to be able to scale our programs and help prepare others. So this is the thing about this opportunity. There's all these funds that need to be deployed, 40% need to go to low and moderate income, underserved communities. How are we gonna do that? Where are the boots on the ground? The CDFI industry, which is designed to serve those communities, has never done really climate lending intentionally. So what we're doing is we're helping prepare. We've created a Southern cohort, Southern Plus. We're working with other green banks across the nation to transfer knowledge, to provide tools. One of those is our technology, which we're looking into gaming, which is why it's so fun to be here and hear all this innovation and technology, because we need to use tools to scale the deployment. So we see a huge opportunity in leveraging those public dollars. There will not be, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund will not stop at $27 billion. They should be leveraged 3-5 times. But we need to do that in partnership with philanthropy, with other funders, because you know, the solutions have to be for all, meaning that there's gonna have to be extra help in the low and moderate income communities. So from now until those funds flow, we're hoping that investors, philanthropies, and others will help green banks and CDFIs prepare, build capacity, develop tools, develop programs that can be scaled across the nation. So, I mean, we're looking forward to this because I think that as an industry of green banks and CDFIs, we are definitely intentionally preparing the best we can to make sure that no money is left on the table.
Yeah, and we have just a couple more minutes, so
And just adding really quickly to Duanne's comments,
Got some
I
time.
think the two things that I see from the IRA climate bill is access to low-cost capital so that we can continue to lend at below market rate. But the other is the grants that are coming from the program. In my previous example I gave, one of the things that's important about that story is the need to merge grants with green bank financing to truly achieve climate equity. You can't just throw grants at it if people don't have the ability to have savings or access financing. So if you look at our success of 74% low and moderate income, much of that is in the M category because low income people have a more difficult time having the ability to pay. So if we can bring grants from the IRA climate bill to help lower the cost of some of these projects, merge it with green bank financing, those projects are now within grasp and they are within their ability to pay. So merging grants with green bank financing, I think, is going to be critical to opening up low income areas.
So we have one more minute. I thought maybe you'd give us one more story. You gave us a great story, and I think it's important to throw in what you're lending at, because I think that number is important for people who have no credit score or terrible credit scores, what they're able to get the money for.
Well, my wife Dawn's going to kill me because she's heard this story so many times, but one of my favorite stories...
Now you know, we're married.
One of my favorite stories is we had an elderly client in Polk County who was also impacted by Hurricane Irma, and her husband had passed and had huge medical bills. She had to declare bankruptcy. So she shredded her credit score, it was in the low 500s. She too needed a new roof, but she couldn't get financing from anyone. So we had just become a field partner with Kiva.org, and we decided to post the story to that international crowdfunding platform. And within 6.5 hours of us posting this, we raised $10,000 from 331 different investors on 3 different continents, pooled those dollars from the globe, brought them back into Florida, and provided Verta with an unsecured personal loan at 5% interest fixed
5%.
with a 525 credit score.
Unsecured.
And as we're closing this loan, her daughter called me from California and said, are you trying to rip off my mother? You know? And I tried to assure her, no, we're a 501c3.
Too good to be
and
true.
that's what we do. Yeah, it sounded too good to be true,
So
but that is
terrific.
what we do.
I think you're too good to be true too. So I want to thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your stories
Thank
with
you for
us.
having us.
Appreciate it.